We're going to entertain some more things that can entice Giannis Antetokounmpo to stay put in Milwaukee this upcoming summer, this Tuesday on your Bucks latest here on FanArc. Thanks again so much for joining us. I'm Sam Shapiro. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet already, you should stop what you're doing right now and click that subscribe button. And also don't forget to like this video. We've got great daily content you don't want to miss all right here, Monday through Friday. And I'm going to entertain the question today of, is there a draft savior in the cards for the Milwaukee Bucks? Now, where they're currently seated right now, which at the time I'm looking at the standings says they are the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference, I believe that would put Milwaukee right around, at least in a mock draft scenario, at least the top 10 pick, sitting around the 9th pick in the NBA draft. Now, the big question could be, depending on what Milwaukee decides to take at number 9, could that be enough to entice Giannis to want to stay put in Milwaukee instead of trying to take his talents out elsewhere, or maybe entertaining what his play on another team would potentially look like? Now, the three-headed dragon that this Milwaukee Bucks team has kind of garnered in the backcourt over the last couple of games, being Ryan Rollins, Cam Thomas, and Kevin Porter Jr., might be a little too early to rule out potentially drafting a potential star guard that this Bucks team could utilize to maybe pair up with Giannis in the near future. I think two candidates kind of just grazing the board a little bit that could potentially stand out. One being Mikel Brown Jr., the 6'5" guard from Orlando playing in Louisville right now, who's averaging about 18 points a game, could definitely be a pretty solid, I would say, top 10 pick for Milwaukee to look into. But I think a little bit more of a clear-cut choice in terms of a floor general that can also score at a high clip would be Darius Acuff Jr., the 6'2" guard from Detroit, Michigan. So he's playing with Arkansas right now. Just scored 49 points on February 18th against Alabama. So, I mean, if you're looking for a floor general point guard there, I think Darius Acuff or Mikel Brown Jr., both of them would be solid picks for Milwaukee to kind of look into, at least in terms of maybe looking for a draft savior, at least in the backcourt for Milwaukee, that could potentially complement the talents that Antetokounmpo would bring in the front court, assuming that this three-headed dragon we're kind of seeing right now in Kevin Porter Jr., Cam Thomas, and Ryan Rollins doesn't consistently, continue to play at the level they're playing at right now. But I definitely think that is in the cards to maybe come to fruition. That is, if Milwaukee doesn't take advantage of another potential point guard that they could get off the waivers. And we've entertained this topic on the channel a little bit here. Should the Bucks go for Ja Morant specifically this summer, where the Grizzlies could be in a position to make a trade for the former superstar point guard? Only reason I'm bringing this up is a recent article from Bleacher Report basically debunked that Sacramento and Miami were really the only two teams that were moderately, to some extent, interested in acquiring Morant. But those reports also suggested that over the course of the summer, Milwaukee could be at least a suitor to maybe try to strike up a deal for Morant, in hopes of pairing Morant up with Antetokounmpo and having that duo be something enticing that Giannis would want to kind of at least see play out, in hopes of that maybe being a winning caliber team in the Eastern Conference where he could stay put, and then also maybe make another run at being a championship contender, hopefully bringing Morant to the former superstar level he was playing at before, just a few seasons ago. Drop in the comments if you think the risk reward would be worth it in that scenario, because again, little on the fence about how that would kind of pan out. So I don't necessarily disagree with all you guys in the comments going, why the hell would we go for Ja Morant? There is so much risk between the off-the-court antics, the decline in play we've seen this season, and just the amount of money he'd have to get paid and his overall durability on the court. I think those are all very fair arguments to not want to go for Morant at this point in time. But if that is an enticing move that would maybe at least put Antetokounmpo on the not on the chopping block, but in a position to really think about and consider what his future in Milwaukee could look like, it's better than kind of just letting this divorce kind of melt away and ultimately letting a superstar player walk. At least you're putting in that good old college try, I would say. But moving over to another player in Milwaukee's rotation that I think should be talked about, at least in this episode, that being Pete Nance. In the absence of Miles Turner, we've seen Nance get a little bit of extra burn in the rotation, but I do think that ultimately Pete Nance has shown that he clearly is an efficient player. In the two games where Turner wasn't on the floor, against the Pelicans and against the Thunder, Nance saw roughly 20 minutes of play, and in those minutes, he garnered roughly 11 points and 6 rebounds, give or take, across those two performances respectively. But then Miles Turner returns back to the lineup, and we basically don't see Nance at all anymore. He got about 5 minutes in that next game and didn't even get any shots to fall. And granted, Ousmane Dieng being in the rotation also kind of takes away potential minutes that Nance could see. But drop in the comments if you guys think Nance could be a focal piece in this lineup for Milwaukee, at least towards the end of the rotation. I mean, obviously, when you're looking at kind of how the backcourt's been shaping up now, obviously, Dieng kind of in the rotation. And then when Giannis comes back, pairing that up with Turner and Bobby Portis, along with Kyle Kuzma, there are definitely a lot of guys that could garner some minutes in there. But I definitely think you can make a little bit of room and potentially find some sort of sweet spot in between, the 5 minutes he did play in comparison to the 20 minutes he was playing without Turner in the lineup. I think you could at least give him 10 to 15 minutes depending on what the need is that night. So drop in the comments what the, expectation should be, because right now I think my man Nance is getting greased just a little bit. Moving forward, looking into Milwaukee's schedule, Milwaukee has a big matchup tonight against the Miami Heat, and I think this is a must-win for this Milwaukee team. Considering what the backcourt has turned into since All-Star Weekend, the Bucks have actually been on a pretty, I would say, I don't want to say a hot tear, but they've won more than half of at least their last 10 games, I would say. And out of their last 5, they've won 3. So with them sitting at the time I'm looking at the standings right now, Milwaukee is 11th in the Eastern Conference. There have been reports suggesting over the last week and a half that, this Milwaukee team, now with guys like Cam Thomas and Ousmane Dieng in the lineup, that they could potentially make a run to be a play-in tournament team. And then especially with Giannis back in the mix, they could definitely be competitive in that regard. But the question is, if they, I guess what I'm really asking is, or what I'm really trying to say rather is, Milwaukee needs to beat this Miami team if when you get that whole lineup back into fruition, you're in a position where you've only got to win a few more games and you're not trying to battle back with a 5, 6, 7 game win streak. Because just looking at Milwaukee's next 5 games, they don't have an easy schedule by any means necessary. Yes, they did win 3 out of their last 5, but after Miami, they've got a number of tough matchups. They're going up against Cleveland the following day on Wednesday. Then they've got a contest with the Knicks on Friday, followed by, which is, in my opinion, their easiest game out of the 5, a matchup with the Bulls 4th on Sunday, March 1st. And then Monday the 2nd, they're back in action, battling it out against the Boston Celtics. So the Heat, the Cavs, the Knicks, and the Celtics, all, I would say, very strong teams in the Eastern Conference that Milwaukee is ultimately going to be battling against if they're even in a position in the postseason to win some of these big games. But Miami, outside of Chicago, is arguably the easiest lineup. And I would say Miami is definitely one of those fringe teams of they are totally on that 50-50 line of being not really an exciting team, but also being a very exciting and deadly team to watch. They could really go either way with it, I think. They could ultimately come out and drop 125, 130 points on you if they're making their shots, but they can't get the outside game to kind of translate and not take care of the ball. They could end up scoring 110 points and then ultimately losing the game by 15. Do I think they're going to lose to Milwaukee by that margin? Maybe with Antetokounmpo in the lineup, but with Giannis ruled out tonight, I mean, It's definitely going to be a tough test for Milwaukee. And I think that if they can beat the Heat, they will regain some of the momentum they had lost, at least from the game they had, or at least, at least from Sunday's loss to Toronto. They will regain some of that momentum they lost in that loss to Toronto over the weekend. So that's why I would say, this win against, or this game against Miami, definitely a must win for this Milwaukee Bucks team. They're going to need all the momentum they can get before Giannis comes back. And if they're at least building pieces in this lineup to have a more concrete team for when Giannis comes back and going into next season, the little things they need to do include winning some of these games. So drop in the comments what you guys think Milwaukee needs to do to win this game against the Heat, and if they do lose, what I guess is next for them in terms of trying to find a way to regain some of that momentum they had going into All-Star Weekend and then quickly continuing to pick up where they left off following the All-Star break. That's going to do it for this Tuesday's episode of your Bucks Latest on FanArc. Don't forget to drop a like on this video, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. We've got great daily content you don't want to miss, all right here, Monday through Friday. Thanks so much for joining us this Tuesday. I'm Sam Shapiro. Have a great day.